seconds, we're going to get started.
We sent your
Go
voice
ahead, Earl.
through an auto-tuner. Yeah, I said that's what we did. We sent your voice through an auto-tuner.
Isn't that fun how we get that distortion in feedback? Anyway, okay, guys, well, we're going to go ahead and get underway here with today's program. I know that Coach Earl has a ton of amazing stuff to share with you. For those of you who are new to this series or program, we started this series back in October last year, and the reason we decided to do it was to create a community of learning. Within the mortgage industry, there's a lot of changes that are coming. There's a lot of focus that's been placed on the regulatory quality control and compliance stuff, but not near enough, I think, has been placed on the business development, growth, marketing, sales, communication, customer service, operational systems, and support structures. And that's really what we as a company help you work through, whether it's in a small group or one-on-one coaching environment. We help our clients get from where they are to where they want to go faster by fine-tuning the systems of how they operate on a daily basis. So we built this webinar series to bring to you guys timely topics and content that are really designed to give you tremendous value and education in a free environment. We're kind of a giver's gain type of company. We want to focus on, giving you everything you need to get to the next level. And the design and focus here was to create a community of learning within our industry where we're all engaged and focused on how to help each other grow and prosper and become better as a group. I think we've had a pretty good success and track record for that. So today's program is the third in a three-part series focused on the Triune Brain theory, which is under the title of Mastering Communication. And Coach Earl McLain, who is a coach who's been with us and with our coaching team for about 6 years now. I think you guys started working together, Earl, back in, what, 05? I think it's when you and I started working together. I mean, almost all the way back to the very beginning of Maximum Acceleration. But, Earl's experience, if you have not had the opportunity to meet Coach Earl yet, you will today. Just tremendous experience. Over 30 years in training and development. Was one of the guys who helped build the bi-referral-only training program. Was one of the 3 people in history that Joe Stumpf ever actually licensed to go out and do the bi-referral-only training on the roadshow tours that they used to do in the late and mid-'90s and early 2000s. From there, transitioned over to working with another good friend of ours, Rene Rodriguez, with the Rapid Change Company, and then on into the evolution of Valentum. And is one of Valentum's certified trainers in the Transformational Growth Voluntary Momentum programs that Rene Rodriguez and his company offer. And it was right about that time that Earl picked up the information that he's going to share with you, and that he did share with you in the first 2 parts of the series. Now, by the way, each of these are a standalone series, so don't flip out and feel like you've missed something. If you do have information, if you do want to go back and catch part 1 and part 2, there's certainly options we'll talk about with that. But I'll tell you what, Earl has been one of the best presenters that I've had the great privilege and honor to meet over the years. He's been a great friend to me and to Maximum Acceleration over the years, and I was very honored and pleased when he joined our coaching team. And I'm very excited to hear what he has to share with you guys today. It's a great refresher for me. So I guess without further preamble, Earl, why don't you go ahead and jump on and share what you have to share with us today.
I will, and thank you again, Eric, for having me back. I've really been enjoying this series, and I've been catching all of the webinars that have been presented, and the level of professionalism of some of the speakers that you've had have been phenomenal. I've really been enjoying it. People like Greg Frost and other people that are prominent in the mortgage industry. So I've really been enjoying it. So I wanted to say thank you, and also thank you to everyone that's here today. This is the third part of a series that we're doing, but I am going to take a little bit of time to do some recaps so you won't feel like you're missing out on anything, all right? Because we're going to recap a couple of the other parts. What we're talking about is your brain and human behavior. And I use the Triune Brain theory in just about everything that I do. I work with a number of large companies where we train a lot of loan officers on connecting with their clients. And I've found that the Triune Brain theory explains probably better than any other way a human behavior and what your client is actually experiencing or what your prospect is going through when you first sit down and meet with them. And it's interesting because I was reading a little article that talked about a man by the name of Daniel Pink, and he wrote the book To Sell is Human, The Surprising Truth About Moving Others. Attunement, one of the 3 most valuable qualities that you need to move others. And essentially what attunement is being in sync with who and or what is around you. So when you're in attunement, you're curious, you ask questions, you listen to the answers, and you empathize with people. Now, according to Pink, the first rule of attunement is to reduce your power. You do that by letting go of your perspective, which opens up the space for you to share the perspective of other people. Pink quoted one very highly successful salesperson who related this to humility. He said, great salespeople, she said, take the attitude, I am sitting in the small chair so that you can sit in the big chair. Now, what most people are looking for and looking to figure out is what it would feel like to work together with you. That's what they want to know. When you first meet your prospect, they want to know, what's it going to feel like to work with you? And what most salespeople do is they show what it would feel like for some expert to come in and tell them what they should do. So really, people don't come to the table, and I think I quoted this last week by Peter Bregman. He said that most people don't come to the table to listen. They come to be heard, and they want to listen to you hear them, is what they're looking for. And that's all part of human behavior. So let's jump into this triune brain theory. The triune brain theory was created many years ago by a man by the name of Paul McLain, and that's M-A-C-L-E-A-N if you want to look it up. But Paul McLain, he was a neuroscientist, and what he was trying to do is he was trying to figure out why people did what they did. Why do we behave the way that we do? And basically what he said, what he came up with, was in this theory is that we have different parts to our brain that receive information at different times. Okay, and so the first part of our brain that receives the information is called the reptilian, or the basal ganglia is the name of the brain technically. And this reptilian brain, I'll talk a little bit more about it. Let me get through the parts of the brain first. The second part is the limbic system, or the mammalian brain. It has characteristics that most resemble those of mammals, okay, as opposed to a reptile who is cold-blooded and, will even eat their young if they're hungry enough. The next part of the brain, and this is what we think of, this part that we think of when we think of the brain, is the neocortex. That's that hemispheric brain that we use for logic and reason. It's where our decisions are made. Now, part of the neocortex is called the prefrontal lobe. Prefrontal lobe is it's kind of the operating center, if you will, of the brain. It's kind of like the processor in a computer, where the brain hard drive holds all the logic. The processor itself goes and gets the logic and figures out what it's going to do. Okay? So let's first talk about this reptilian brain. What do we know about reptiles? Well, we know that they're cold-blooded. We know that they're only concerned about themselves and safety. Okay? And that's what the prime question that the reptilian brain asks in any kind of situation. And I like to talk about, clients coming to the table with us or prospects coming to the table with us. When we first jump into conversation with them, we jump in at a logical level. Now, it's natural for that to happen because as loan officers, we do this every day. We are constantly working on loans. We've got a loan. We got how many loans in the pipeline? We're trying to get new loans, and we're very used to having to keep up with the regulations and the rules. And we know more about the loan industry than any of our clients do. And because of that, and because of our clients, they only do this once, twice, maybe 3 times in their lifetime. They come to us with a certain amount of reptilian because there's some fear involved there. And the reptilian brain just wants to know, am I safe? Can I trust you? That's what it's looking for. It's looking for that confirmation. So when we jump in at a logical level and try to explain to them what we're going to be able to do for them, we haven't really listened, and we haven't really helped them feel safe yet. So that's what the reptilian brain needs to know is, am I safe? The 3 tools that the reptilian brain has to work with are tools like fight, flight, and freeze. Now, I know you've heard that before. This is all that the reptilian has to work with. So if you've ever come up on a reptile out in the desert or in the woods, or a lizard, maybe down in Mexico you've run across one of those Gila monsters, you'll notice that they will do one of those 3 things. They will either fight, they're split, or they're going to freeze up and pretend that you don't see them. Anytime that you've ever been in an argument with a person that you know, they're in their reptilian brain and they're in fight mode in argument. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be exaggerated. There can be just a slight amount of reptilian that comes into a conversation. Nevertheless, we can't get past that gatekeeper until we help them feel safe. So the reptilian brain, it monitors everything, it's wary of anything new and different, and it wants to keep change and growth out. So they're not going to listen to you on a logical level unless you help them feel safe. So how do I help them feel safe? It's really quite easy. Take your agenda away and listen to their needs. So it's simply a matter of letting them know. That one of the things that I use, and you'll hear this in some of my other webinars that we did on this, if you want to go back and listen to them in detail, but I simply give them options that they already know that they have. I let them know that I'm here to help them, and if there's at the end of the conversation, if they decide not to do anything, that a mortgage just is not the right time for them right now, that's perfectly okay with me. So I take that away, and it lets their guard down. Okay? So John Rady said that every decision that we make physically alters our brain. Now, I don't know how much you know about the human brain, but the brain itself has neurons that travel through the gray matter. And when we make a decision, a new neuron is burrowed. It's one of the reasons that habits are so hard to break, is that when we get in a habit of doing something, that neuron has traveled so many times through that path that it's created this super highway. And when we try to do something new and different, and I'm sure you've all heard that in order to break a habit, you got to start a new one, right? And it takes 21 days and all this. Well, the reason for that is because that new neuron is going to have an easier time to drop into the old superhighway than it is to continue to burrow that new pathway, okay? So we actually do have neurons that travel through our brain. They're electronic. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, I don't know, I'm sure that everyone has heard of St. Augustine. He was a somewhere between 14th and 16th century philosopher. And he said one time that people travel to wonder at the heights of mountains, at the huge waves of the sea, at the long courses of rivers, at the vast compass of the ocean, at the circular motion of the stars, and they pass themselves by without wondering. Now, if you give that a little bit of thought, I'm sure that you'll come up with the conclusion that I did. What he's really saying here is that we see so much outside of us that is just miraculous. It's just breathtaking. I don't know if you've ever stood out in the country or out in the woods where there are no city lights around at night and looked up at the stars and realized, oh my gosh, I had no idea that there were so many. It's just an amazing sight, and I look at that with awe. I stand on top of a mountain peak and look at the valleys and the peaks and the rivers way down in the peaks, and it's just miraculous. And I think of those things as being extremely special and just a wonderful thing. Yet to look inside myself and realize that I have those same capabilities, I have that same wonderment about me, is something that people don't do too often. Because I believe that you have more magic. There's a lot more to you than what you're giving and what you're actually putting out there. That's what I want to kind of really make an impression on you for. Because people say that we only use like 1% of our brain. What if we took that to 2% or 3%? What if we expanded? What a lot of people do after they get out of high school or college is they just put their brain on a shelf and they go to work the rest of their lives. Think about Roger Bannister. Who was Roger Bannister? He was the guy that broke the 4-minute mile. Now, what did people say before he broke that 4-minute mile about running that fast? They said it couldn't be done. They said that his heart would explode. Well, his heart didn't explode. In fact, after he broke that 4-minute mile, people started breaking it all over the country. People started believing it really happened with them. So it's amazing what our self-imposed limitation will keep us away from, things that we don't believe that we can really do. So what if we could eliminate those limitations? Well, here's a better question. What if we have self-imposed limitations that we're not even aware of? Another great philosopher, his name was Charlie Brown. He said that life is like a 10-speed bike, and most of us have gears that we never use. In the 70s, there were 2 rockets that were sent up. They were called the Voyager rockets. And those rockets' prime mission was to send back photos, pictures of the planets and the solar system that we live in. Now, those rockets are out of the solar system now, but they sent back some of the most spectacular pictures that we've ever seen of the planets. They were able to identify different things like the rings of Saturn and identify what the rings were made out of and so forth. But the pictures that were sent back were just spectacular, and it did it all on a 2-volt battery. Now, we actually have, like I said, we have those electric neurons, those that are going through our brain. And so we do carry voltage in that mass, in our brain. How much voltage, and I wouldn't expect anyone to know this, but if you do happen to know the answer, type it into one of the question areas or the chat window. I'd be interested in anybody if you really do know the answer to this. But how many volts do you suppose we have in the human brain? And I'm just going to give you the answer. How many volts do we have in the human brain? 40 volts, which is phenomenal. I mean, our car runs on a 12-volt battery. You know, so to have that much activity and that much electronic activity going through our brains is phenomenal. There was another study that was done about doctors. They had these different doctors. Some of them were getting sued constantly, and others were never getting sued. So the insurance companies wanted to find out what the difference was. You know, what were these doctors that never got sued doing that the doctors that always got sued were not? And what they came down to was bedside manner. It simply came down to bedside manner. They saw that the doctors that were getting sued all the time, that basically the patients really didn't know or like them. But the doctors that took a little bit of time to spend some time with their patients and find out how they were doing, to actually connect, if you will, you know, aside from the medical profession, but connect on a personal level. They found that those doctors, the patients liked. And so even when they did something wrong, they didn't sue them, which was very interesting. Now, how long did it take them to make that connection? Believe it or not, it only took 30 seconds. 30 seconds, he gave them their entire 40 volts of focused attention. Now, when I mean 40, they gave them their entire 40 volts. I know a lot of people, they're proud of the fact that they can multitask. And I believe that when you multitask, all you're doing is you're splitting up your voltage in different areas. So you're not giving 100% to any one area when you're multitasking. And I know that I don't do as good of a job on any one thing when I'm focusing on 5. It just doesn't seem to help me too much. And it's interesting because I took this to heart, and I brought this home. I've got boys right now. They're twin boys, and they're 16 years old. And when they were in grade school, one of the things that they have to do is they have to bring home an assignment notebook. It's how the teachers get them involved with the family, because otherwise you get very, very brief answers when you ask your third grader, you know, what did you do in school today? You get very short answers. Nothing. You know, did you learn anything? Yep. What'd you learn? Not much. You know, you just don't get very much out of them. So the teachers came up with this incentive program where they would send home an assignment notebook, and it was filled out by the day. And I'm sure that any of you that have kids that went through grade school probably experienced this. But they told them written out exactly what they did throughout their school day. And the incentive was that when they brought that back initialed by the parent, meant that they had gone over their day with their parent, then they got a sticker or some sort of incentive for bringing that back. What was interesting when I did this with my son was Zachary. He would come down into my office every day when he got home from school, and he would go over his assignment notebook. Now, his incentive was to get that sticker or that sucker or whatever the teacher, the carrot that the teacher was handing out there. That was his incentive, and so he did it all the way through his grade school. When he entered junior high, he continued to come down into my office every day and tell me about his day and what happened. And I thought, well, what caused that? And as I looked back, it's because he was getting my full attention throughout grade school when he came down to tell me about his day. I stopped everything that I did. I turned around and I listened to him for approximately, I'd say 30 to 60 seconds is about all it took for him to go through his day. I might ask some questions and extend the conversation a little bit longer, but he liked the fact that I was giving him that attention. So the next time that you have someone come into your office to speak with you about something, stop typing. Stop sending that email. Put your phone away. Turn around and give them your 40 volts of focused attention for 30 seconds on purpose. Okay, we're going to get into the next little study that was done, and this is called the impact of channels. Albert Mehrabian talked about communicating feelings and attitudes. And this is extremely important, I think, when we talk about the part of the brain that we're going to be discussing today, because it's the part of the brain that actually understands and has verbal centers. But a lot of times we rely too highly on those verbal centers in a lot of our communication. And what I'm talking about with verbal centers, I'm talking about understanding words. What they found out was in this impact of channels study was that words only contribute 7% to our communication, just words alone. Now, for me, that's scary in a day of texting and emails and so forth. And I know they've come up with all kinds of cute little icons to try to express emotion, but it just doesn't do the trick all the time. I don't know if you've ever had an email or a communication that's gone out that was taken the wrong way because it was just the words. It was just the text. I could use certain words. I could say, I didn't say he kicked the dog. Now, I could use the same words and say 5 or 6 different things here. I could use the same words and say, I didn't say he kicked the dog. 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 Just setting the emphasis on a different word in that phrase says an entirely different communication. It sends out something completely different each time. So it's important to understand that our words are not all of our communication with other people. Tone also contributes. About 38% is our tone. Another is nonverbals. The nonverbals are the body language, the things that we do, crossing the arms. And I know that you've had clients that, or prospects that were sitting across from you. You could tell that their arms were crossed. You could tell that they weren't really in tune and listening to everything that you said. That's because of that reptilian reaction. Whenever there's fear, whenever there's a lack of safety, they feel like they need to protect themselves. And the nonverbals come through in there. So 93% of our communication has nothing to do with words. So the important key to this is that words are just not enough. Okay, the next part of the brain that we discussed, and we discussed this part last week, and I'm going to go through it very quickly so we can get to the neocortex. But the limbic brain is the next part that receives information. Now, that's our mammalian brain, our midbrain, they call it. It has characteristics that closely resemble those of mammals. Now, what do we know about mammals as opposed to reptiles? Well, we know that mammals are warm-blooded. We know that they do care for their young, and there's a sense of team and community with mammals, okay? The limbic brain is the seat of our emotions. It's the home of our values, and it's the gateway to our long-term memories. So things that we make a connection with, because it's the seat of our emotions and our values, things that we make an emotional connection with or a value-related connection with, those are the things that we remember the longest. Things like when we were kids. When we were kids growing up, we remember things like it just happened yesterday. Think back on if you're old enough, think back of when Kennedy was assassinated. I can put myself in the grade school that I was in. I can remember, I didn't know a whole lot about the president at that time, but I can remember that it touched me emotionally. And I remember that time. Think about when the Challenger blew up, you know, when it went up into space and with the teacher on board, the space shuttle. And when that thing blew up, I can remember walking into the room that I was walking into and sitting on the big screen TVs. I can remember that like it happened just yesterday. I can remember very specifics about it. I can also remember when the Twin Towers got hit. I know exactly where I was. Folks, that was years ago. That was years ago. And yet I can still remember details. But it's difficult for me to remember who won the last Nobel Prize or the last 5 Nobel Prize winners. It's difficult for me to remember the last 5 MVPs in Major League Baseball. I don't remember those things. There was no emotional connection. They're important, but that's not the long-term memories that I hang on to. So the limbic system is the seat of all of that. Now, the limbic system asks one thing. It's the second gatekeeper, and it wants to know, do you care about me? So once we've made it past the reptilian brain and they feel safe with us, then they want to know, do you care about me? And that's what Daniel Pink is talking about in this book, To Sell as Human, is becoming in attunement with these folks, becoming into sync with them, losing our agenda and listening to what their needs are. Okay, that's how you let them know that you actually do care about them and you value them and they do matter to you. That's the second gatekeeper. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get into, since we've kind of recapped what we talked about in the last two webinars of this series, And if you haven't listened to those, go back, and there's a lot more detail in there, but I've given you the highlights. But go back and listen to those webinars. Just from attending this webinar, you should receive a link, and I believe that link will take them back to all the past webinars. Eric, is that correct? I think so. I'm not sure that.
Yes.
Maybe Eric.
I have my phone on
Okay.
Earl, yeah. Yes, so we'll make sure we get that in the follow-up message. And keep in mind, guys, it does usually take about 48 hours to render the video and get it posted on the website so that it can be transferred easily. So just be watching for that, probably more likely tomorrow. But we will make sure that we get the links to the previous 2 sessions into the follow-up messaging from today's session as well.
Okay,
so you'll have
cool.
The series.
Okay, cool. So they'll be able to go back and listen to the other 2. That's perfect. That's perfect. But you've got the highlights. You've got the highlights of that. And if you need to understand the more of why and how and what do I do with this on the reptilian brain and the limbic system, go back and listen to those, because it's extremely important that we get past those first 2 gatekeepers in order to get here. This is the neocortex, the hemispheric brain. This is where decisions are made. So when we come to the table to talk and to listen and to really understand and our clients' needs and come up with a solution for them, this is where that decision-making process happens, is in the hemispheric brain. It's that gray matter that we think of when we think of the brain itself. And I don't know if you've ever seen or touched a real human brain. I've spoken to people that have. I have not. But I've spoken to people that have that say it's kind of a soft, you can actually stick your finger right into it. You know, it's that it's not really dense at all. It's kind of mushy, if you will. Okay? The neocortex responds to things like the external world. It responds to experiences, information, and data. It responds to novelty, change, and finally it responds to words. The first 2 centers of our brain, the reptilian and the limbic system, have no verbal centers. They don't understand words themselves. They do understand actions and intent and things like that. They don't understand words. The neocortex actually has 3 verbal centers in it. Now, we also have what's called the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain, okay, the left and right brains. Anyone ever wondered whether they were left-brained or right-brained? I used to always get really confused about it because I could never remember which characteristics, you know, were associated with each part of the brain. But the left brain itself is considered to be overused, valued, and very powerful. The right brain is said to be underused, that we don't use it as much. It's misunderstood, but it's also very powerful. Now, in looking at these characteristics right here, I think we can very, very safely assume why the left brain is considered that it's overused and that it's that powerful and it's very valued. The reason is because we are kind of taught throughout life to live in that brain. We're hired for these skills, the logical, the mathematical, the analytical part of our brain, and linear, time-oriented, organized, likes to plan, goal-oriented. These are skills that we develop in life based on what we learn, the behaviors that we learn throughout our life. Okay, those connections are actually made. And these logical and mathematical and analytical skills are what we're hired for. So we're taught, you know, as a young child, you know, draw inside the lines. Don't draw outside the lines. You know, don't go outside the box. Sit down and shut up. You know, we're taught very, very organized and very linear things. Whereas the right brain is more humorous and musical. It's emotional, metaphorical, relationship-oriented. And I want you to really key into that word right there, relationship-oriented. Comfortable with chaos, likes to be spontaneous, and focuses on the now. I know my wife is very, very left-brained, and I'm extremely right-brained. I love music. I've played in rock bands most of my life. I love to tell jokes. If anybody knows me at all, they know that there's going to be a new joke coming down the road as soon as they see me again. The relationship, I love building relationships. Of course, this is what I've been teaching for a long time, too. That may be why I live in that side of my brain. Now, I also have a very logical side to me. We all use both sides of our brains. The key here is that we've been forced to live on that left brain side for so long that we tend to focus on it more, and we forget about the right brain. And what's truly important here is that we use both sides of our brain. It's the way that we connect with people. It's the way that we operate. And think about yourself at work. You know, where do you live on most of the time at work? Now, at home, it may change. You may see yourself more right-brained when you're at home, and that's very normal. A lot of people are that way. But bringing that right brain into work with you will help you in a lot of time. What happens when things just go chaotic? Well, the right brain is comfortable with chaos. The left brain is not. Okay? So it's important to understand really which sides of the brain we are building and we are using. And the real key here is, and the real benefit is to build up the right brain so that we're using both sides of our brain equally. That's how we gain more power and that more magic that I was talking about earlier. There was another study that was done. It was called the Lots of Creativity Study, and this is where our right brain is. Okay, is our creativity. It lives in our right brain. And during this study, just to kind of show you how this plays out, they took people and they started with age group 4 to 5, and they wanted to see what their percentage of highly creative responses were to questions about certain things. Like I could take a stack of markers, okay, just regular, markers for a whiteboard, and I could take them, and you know how they plug together. I can set the bottom on the cap of another one, and I could stick another one on top of that, stick another one. If I stacked up 4 or 5 of those, and I asked you to tell me, what is this? Well, the logical answer would be, this is a stack of markers. And that's more of a left brain type of activity. We'd say that. But if we get into our right brain and you ask a bunch of children age 4 to 5 what this is, they're going to come up with 100 different things. It's a lightsaber. It's a magic princess wand. It's a sword, and they found out that the responses that came out of that age group were 97 and 98% of highly creative responses came out of that age group. What happened when we reach age 10? It dropped down to 72%. Now, as we get older, you can probably assume it's going to drop even further, right? Okay, and you're right. When we became 15 years old, it dropped down to 30%. Now, what happened when we reached age 21, besides alcohol? Well, the percentage of highly creative responses dropped dramatically to 2 to 3%. And a lot of this is simply because we stop using that right brain, and we become more in tune with our left side, our left brain. At birth, and in today's society, I've got to ask you this: can we afford so little creativity with all the regs and everything that we have to deal with today? We have to be able to tap into that creative source in our right brain. At birth, we are fully reptilian, meaning that we can fear. Okay, so that reptilian brain is already developed because that's there to keep us safe. At birth, we are fully limbic, which means we are able to love and hate. There's emotional centers built in there, so we understand those. But all the other cortical connections that are made must be made throughout life, and those are the connections that are made in our hemispheric brain, our neocortex. Okay, you might find it surprising that most of the world is right-brained. Even there's been studies that show that that even at birth that men are actually born right-brained. As we grow into adulthood, we are forced into more left brain activities. Big boys don't cry, right? So keep the emotions out. And so we learn a lot of left brain activities, but most of the world is right brained. Women, by the way, are at birth, the studies show that they are born mid-brained, so that they use both equal parts of their brain at birth. Throughout the years, up until maybe 20 or 30 years ago, when women started really entering the job market on an equal basis to men, they were actually more emotional and more right-brained. Now they're becoming more mid-brained and becoming even, in some cases, more left-brained. Okay, the neocortex is the brilliant part of us, and the thing to remember about the neocortex is that it won't come out to play when the reptilian is in control. So starting your conversations with your prospects, starting your conversations with clients, any type of reptilian fear needs to be addressed first. They have to be able to feel safe. They have to feel comfortable. Things that the reptilian like are routine, repetition. They like, organization, and they like to be able to know that they're safe. That's what the reptilian needs. So simply by starting your conversation with something that helps them feel safe, like you may say something like, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming in. And before we get started, I've got a lot of great information for you, but before we get into that, I want you to know that I'm okay with whatever decision you make today. Fair enough? If they decide to do nothing at all, that's okay. If they decide that they want to use somebody else, that's okay too. If they decide that they want to just do this on their own, there's not a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. Now, I've had people really cringe at that when I teach loan officers. They say, but I want to make the sale. It has nothing to do with making or not making the sale. It has everything to do with lowering the reptilian brain and getting them to feel safe with you, okay? And then lose your agenda. Lose your agenda and focus on what they need. Ask questions. You know, when you lose your agenda, it opens you up to accepting theirs, which means that you have to ask questions. You have to find out what's right for them. You have to ask the right questions to find out what their needs are, and get into conversation about confirming that you understand them correctly of their needs. There will be plenty of time to let them know what you're capable of when they start working together with you. Okay, there will be plenty of time for that. But what you have to show them is that you care. Okay, you make it past that limbic and past the reptilian and past the limbic that way. There are strong cortical connections that are built in life aside from just the normal standard rate that we build connections through experiences, okay, and through learning and growth. Highly traumatic experiences and emotional experiences also build very strong cortical connections, and they build very quickly this way. So trauma, things like heart attack, stroke, loss of a child or spouse, religious experiences, rites of passage. Rites of passage are, well, if we use an analogy, it would be, say, in the Native American culture, maybe way back when a child would turn 13, they would send him off into the woods to live off the land for 3 days, for example, and there he became a man. Okay, that is a rite of passage. In our culture, rites of passage include, as we're growing up, things like turning 16 and getting a driver's license, turning 18 and being able to vote in most states, 21 and being able to drink. Okay, that's another rite of passage. We also have rites of passage in our organizations, promotions, things like awards, you know, are different rites of passage. Now, these types of experiences build connections rapidly. If you've ever had a father that was, say, very militant in the way that he you know, disciplined and scolded you growing up, never said he loved you. He didn't show much emotion at all, but he was just very stern. If you ever had a father like that who experienced a heart attack or a stroke and survived it, you probably noticed a huge change. And the reason is because those cortical connections are built so fast, and the connections made from the left brain to the right brain, they don't really understand the emotions. They've never had to deal with them before. And now they're dealing with them in a massive way because those connections are made so quickly and so strongly. Okay? The next part, and the part that you really need to understand, is that we can't get here, and that's to the neocortex, until we pass that test here. And that would be the reptilian and the limbic system. And that's the main key that you really need to focus on when you're dealing with your clients, when you're dealing with your prospective clients, and even your past database. Okay, so the prefrontal lobes I'll go through very quickly. It's the last part of the brain, and it's actually part of the neocortex, which is why it still fits within the triune, okay, the triune brain theory. We are the only mammals that have prefrontal lobes. That's why deers get hit. The prefrontal lobes are kind of the CEO of the brain. And if I can give you an analogy of how the prefrontals work, is basically we can see future action, if you will, or we have great vision in the fact that we can see a conclusion or a consequence to specific actions. So we can sit back and we can say, if I enter the road with that car coming down at 60 miles an hour, it's very likely that I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get hit. So a deer can't do that because it has no prefrontal lobes. So we can look and say, okay, if A and B were to happen, C is very likely the consequence, and that's pretty much what's going to happen. That's going to be the outcome. And so that's what our prefrontal lobes do for us. It also connects to the limbic system. So when a decision is made, and here this will give you kind of an idea of how it all happens, but when we go to make a decision, our prefrontal lobes check in with our value center. If that decision is in alignment, we decide to take action on it. So here's kind of the way it all works. We're faced with information. The reptilian brain acts first and says, am I safe? If it finds itself safe and it doesn't have to use any of those tools, fight, flight, or freeze, Then the limbic system is connected. The limbic system wants to know, do you care about me? Is this decision going to affect that? So we have emotions, values, and memories are involved there. Once we make it to the neocortex, the neocortex wants to know, is it interesting? It's going to use its logic, its reason, its data, its intuition. It's a big picture type of a brain. Okay. Once it decides that it wants to make a decision on something, it's going to check in with the CEO. Is it inspiring? The prefrontal lobes are then going to check with the values center, and if it's in line with our values, we take action. And that are basically the 5 steps of engagement, how anybody makes a decision on anything. You've all heard that we make these decisions. Once we feel that we're safe, we make the decisions in our limbic system. We make a decision based on our values and based on emotions, and we make decisions emotionally. And then later, we get into our neocortex, we actually try to make those decisions make sense. And so we justify them logically. Okay? And that's basically it. So I think I stopped right on time, Eric, is what it looks like to me. But if you have any questions, I know that we're going to be going into a question or chat function, right, for questions?
All right, guys. Okay, well, there's a number of questions coming through, and everybody who's on attendees, go ahead and keep posting those great questions. By the way, even if we don't have time to get to all of your questions today, I want to make sure you go ahead and get them posted in the Q&A, because myself, Earl, and the rest of the coaching team will go ahead and make sure we follow up with those questions and get you the answers that you're looking for. One of the first questions that was asked throughout the program, in case that I noticed there were a couple of you that signed on midway, we covered at the very beginning. The recordings of this 3-part series will be available. We will make sure that we get the links to the 2 previous parts of the program all together for you here. And as we're going through this Q&A section, we'll make sure that you guys get those follow-up messages. Second thing is, one of the other key questions here that I wanted Earl to address. Earl, I know you're a very creative guy, which is one of the reasons I pulled this to the top. This one kind of intrigued me because, you've talked about this sequence and this flow for how to connect and master communication with your audience, with your prospects, with your customers, with your, people that you want to do business with, whether it's business development partners, referral partners, et cetera, et cetera. But what is there a simple? Do you have like a simple, quick, easy rhyme or kind of a memory trick? Anything that we can use to make sure that we can remember this process when we're in the heat of the battle, if you will? Something that we could use to remind us when we're sitting in front of the customer, or when we're out talking to a new business development partner for the first time. Is there a way that we can kind of reinforce these steps, these strategies, these approaches to being able to create that that flow, that focus?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We do it now. We recognize when people are a little bit reptilian. We recognize that. Maybe we didn't put a name behind it, but we recognize when they're kind of closed up there and they're really not listening to a whole lot of what we're saying. And it's because the reptilian brain is not a very smart brain, and it doesn't have the capabilities of hearing a whole lot of what we're saying when it's worried about its safety. And so we recognize when we have clients like that, and that they're a little bit shut down. We just don't do the right things because we don't understand what's going on. What we try to do is we try to sell more. We try to make them more confident in what we can do for them. We go to the wrong extent. Well, really what they need is they need to feel safe. And so I think just simply by understanding and having that awareness now, that you're going to start looking at things a whole lot differently. Let me give you an example. Let's say that your kid comes in and he's really upset and crying about something. Okay, we try to use logic in most cases. Say, well, tell me what happened. Be a big boy. Come on, stop crying. Quit crying and just tell me what happened. And we don't really take it that. Instead of the comfort of a mother, when a kid comes in crying, that's usually when they run to, right? Because their mother says, oh, honey, what happened? Oh, come here. Oh, it's okay. And they make them feel safe. They put their arms around them. They hold them close. And they let them know they care about them. Now the kid can finally quit crying and tell you what happened because we can get them into their logical brain. So the same thing happens with our clients. They come to us and there's these fears. Like I said, it may not be real apparent. But the first thing what we need to do is develop an awareness around what is going on with the people around us. Once we start looking at it, and you're never going to forget this stuff now, because once you learn this, you can't unlearn it. So once you see this out there, you're going to start picking it out. My kids pick it out today. You know, my kids will sit back and say, wow, Dad, that guy was really in Reptilian. You know, they're starting to notice it. So I think the awareness itself is going to stimulate a whole lot of activity from how you deal with those types of situations now. Does that answer the question?
Awesome.
Or are you looking at
yeah,
something
definitely.
that's more technical?
Well, you know, I was thinking about, kind of what I was thinking about as you were saying that, Earl, is just, something simple we can remember that we can reuse time and time again. Is something along the lines of, safety, care, logic, or something, an SCL, an acronym that we can remember. Make them feel safe, then make them feel cared for, then give logic.
Sure.
That kind of an approach or strategy. I don't know. You and I talked about this all the time, Earl, that I'm the left brain guy and you're the right brain guy, and that's why we collaborate so well together. I like
you're
those
definitely
simple,
looking at it from a left brain.
Remember.
Yeah, you're looking at it from a left brain side. You're being very analytical, very logical about it, and I'm looking at it from more of a right brain side. You're going to feel when that happens.
Yeah, let's
you're looking
enjoy
at
it and absorb it. And I'm looking at it from okay, how do we make sure we stick this in my brain so I can keep a hold of it and use it as a tool next time so I can pull it out of the toolkit.
Right.
We definitely have well, definitely. So, again, guys, a lot of these tools and materials that are being shared with you, some of this stuff is you don't necessarily need to have a great strategy. I'll tell you that one of the reasons I bring Earl back to talk about this kind of stuff frequently is because it's nice to have a refresher. It's nice to absorb it, but as he said, when you reinforce some of these concepts in what you do on a daily basis, you'll begin to see that, so the next time you see somebody that's really freaking out and over-emotional and reactive and very defensive, recognize that's reptilian. So the first thing you have to do is make that person feel safe. Now, one of the other things that go along with that, how do you make them feel safe? Earl, I've heard you share before many, many times, and I think you shared it quite a bit in the first webinar in this series with the Reptilian, is what makes people feel safe, order, structure, predictability. Well, Mr. Customer, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's how we're going to get you where we want to help you get. Then the second step of that is the care. And it goes back to that old cliche of, people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we go back to Earl's program on the Ultimate Interview, start asking questions about what's important to them, what are their, secret hidden agenda items that they want to accomplish, what are the things that they are most concerned about, and start asking that customer, that potential business development partner, what's important to them about this next step that you're about to help them take, and really listen to them. Show that care and concern. And then once you've identified that care and concern, reconfirm that you're going to help them do X, Y, and Z, and then go into that logic of, okay, so here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, here's A versus B option comparisons, here's either or type choices that we can help you make that will continue to support the logic without pushing them back to reptilian. Which is another key element of this, by the way, is I think you probably did share this in last week's session, Earl, is that you can push them all the way back to reptilian if you come on too strong, too fast, and that's something that we have to element. We have to lead the customer in the right direction, but we have to let them set the pace. Is kind of what it comes down to. Another question that came up here.
People love to buy. People love to buy, but they don't like to be sold, is what that comes down to. Right.
And a lot of these concepts and elements reinforce what we've been talking about multiple times throughout this series is that, at the end of the day, people are tuned into what they care about first and foremost, and you've got to connect with them where they are. And I use the analogy often of the radio station. Well, the way it was first explained to me when I first took one of my first sales training classes way back when, probably, 83 or 84 or something like that. Was when, we heard the old concept about, people are always tuned into their own radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Well, my generation was the cable generation, and the problem with nobody listened to the radio, and we didn't have, it was funny how it translated over generations. Our grandparents listened to the radio, and they had 2 or 3 stations they could tune into. My parents listened to, watch TV, but they only had the 3 local stations, only 2 of which really came in, and all the commercials were synchronized, right? Because there was one car dealer in town, and they advertised at the same time slot on all 3 stations, right? So there wasn't any point in flipping channels. My generation was the cable generation, the MTV generation. If we didn't like the commercial that was coming on, if it didn't catch our attention, if it didn't resonate with what we cared about, click, we were on to the next program. And that's even worse in the, today's the iPod generation, the internet generation, where, it's amazing to me the technology and how fast it's advanced. My 12-year-old son has an iPhone, and you think about 1993. My first introduction to the internet was in my high school technology class. We went to the library in the school. There was one computer hooked to the internet, and it was a green screen with white cursor, simple text only. That was the internet. Now my son can watch full-length movies on his iPhone, and it's like. And so what we have to be careful to do is we've got to connect with them where they are and tune our message to resonate with what their cares and concerns are. And I think that's another big element of what you're seeing in this program. All right, guys. Well, just a couple of quick announcements, and then I want you to make sure you stay around to the very end, because we do have a couple of key things that we're going to be focusing on over the next couple of weeks, a couple of key things. If you guys like what you're hearing, if you'd like more in-detailed information, many of you are probably thinking about, what is this whole coaching thing all about? How can it benefit me? Well, the number one way we've found over the years to help people understand the true value of coaching is experience it. So we offer what we call a strategy session, which is a true coaching experience between you and one of our maximum acceleration coaches. You'll have committed to invested some of your time to be able to capture crystallized action plans, and with all the tools and resources from our content library that will help you execute that plan. And all you've invested is an hour of your time. At the end of the conversation, we'll leave a little room for it. If you do want to pursue it further, we'll talk about how that happens and what commitments are on both sides of the coin there. Secondly, want to make sure you all are aware of the Maximum Influence series that started last Wednesday and is continuing on every Wednesday for the next 5 weeks. Now, by the way, don't freak out if you miss the first week's session. You'll be able to have unlimited access to the recording. Mr. Greg Frost is an expert in the Dr. Cialdini method and 6 laws of ethical influence, and Greg has agreed to do an in-depth series for us that is a 6-part webinar series going in great detail into the science, psychology, and resource, taking kind of the conversation that Earl has introduced you to today all the way down to what's been learned through 35 years of market testing research by the University of Arizona School of Market Psychology with Dr. Cialdini's flagship program. All of that information has been taken and mortgagized by Mr. Greg Frost, and we're very privileged and honored to have a very close relationship with him, and he's offering this program at an absolute amazing discount to what he would normally charge for this type of workshop. By the way, normally he does a live workshop. It usually costs around $2,900, and he's doing it for us, all 6 webinars in great depth for only $297 for the entire package. Like I said, that gives you unlimited access to the entire webinar series, the recordings, all the materials and resources for all 6 parts of the series. That also gives you access to over 20 hours of additional content, training, video programs, and pre-recorded tactical training from the Maximum Acceleration Library, as well as a free 1-hour coaching session with one of our Maximum Acceleration coaches focused specifically and only on your execution of these strategies. If you want to take advantage of that program, it's not too late to sign up to kick in on the live part of the rest of the series, as well as be able to pick up the recordings from last week's program. Just go to mxlcoach.com/Greg Frost. Again, mxlcoach.com/Greg Frost. By the way, Earl, if you wouldn't mind, as I'm wrapping up here, if you could go ahead and post that into the chat for everybody and kick that link out. You guys can go ahead and hop there now. Go ahead and take advantage of this substantial discount, and we'll get you over to that program, which again is tomorrow at I'm not remembering the time slot off the top of my head, but guys, it's tomorrow midday, depending on your time zone. I think it's 11 o'clock Central is the time slot on it, but anyway, the website has all the information. Next up is coming up next. Next Tuesday's webinar is Mr. David Kuiper, who has become a master of developing financial professional partnerships, successful collaborations with financial planners, CPAs, and other true financial professionals that he collaborates with to help more people take advantage of the opportunities that exist in the market, both refinance and purchase. And as we lean towards more of the purchase-oriented environment, we're going to be kind of focusing on how to dovetail some of that into those conversations. It's a very exciting privilege and honor to have Mr. Kuiper presenting next week, Tuesday, in the continuation of this series. All right, last thing that I want to share with you guys, and this is where the rubber meets the road. You guys have just invested an hour of your time, and you've committed to perfecting your skill and ability. You've been shared with some extremely powerful and amazing ideas by a true expert at understanding the mechanics of decisioning psychology and approach strategy and how to set up a sales system that creates a mastering flow of communication so that you're helping your clients get from where they are to where you want them to be and where they want to be much faster by understanding just the basic thought process that people react and respond to. Now it's time to take it and do something with it. Don't waste this hour invested in your time, because, knowledge without action is useless. If you don't take the time to do something with these ideas, are they ever going to benefit you? So the first step to do this is take a very simple, very focused approach. What was the one and only most valuable thing you heard in today's program? Decide what that one thing was, okay? You can come back and pick up the rest later. You'll have access to the recordings, and our coaching team's here to support you in that as well. Second question is, what action do you need to take to absorb that idea and make it part of what you do on a daily basis? One of the most powerful things that we see our clients do is what we teach is not anything that's rocket science. It's not anything new. In fact, nothing new has been invented in the last 300 years that's of any value when it comes to communication or sales skills. It's just regurgitation of, and sometimes you hear something slightly different in how it's presented, and all of a sudden it clicks for you. Sometimes it's just repetition. It's the 6th or 7th or 8th time you've heard it, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, cool. That's what I need to do. Ideally here now, once this idea has popped in and it's ready to work for you, what do you need to do to make that part of what you do on a daily basis and build some of those neural pathways that Earl talked about in today's program? The results that we see our clients achieve 9 out of 10 times are more about the doing and not about the what. It's more about the actions that they take to finally start using some of these incredible ideas with the help, support, and guidance of our coaching team. The third thing then you want to do is after you've decided what action you need to take, maybe it's reviewing this section of the webinar again, maybe it's memorizing that safety care logic acronym, the SCL, sales process. There's a Mercedes called an SEL. No, that's SCL. Anyway, maybe it's memorizing that and starting to apply it on a daily basis. Okay, so what action do you need to take to put one of these ideas in play for you? Third element is by when will you have that action implemented? Set a specific target date, not as something to beat yourself up with because it's an unrealistic goal, but something to shoot for that you kind of fail your way forward to success. Okay, so maybe you don't get it done this week. Maybe it takes an extra 10 days to get it implemented. But you don't lose sight of it. You keep it on the top of the radar, and you defer it a little bit longer, but you don't ignore it and dismiss it completely. So by when are you going to take that specific action? The fourth element, which is one of the key secrets to execution and implementation, is who are you going to ask to hold you accountable? And I often close this webinar program with some of the same stuff. But guys, if you haven't heard me say this before, or if you haven't caught it and taken use of it, the most powerful thing we could do for ourselves is make a promise to somebody else about what we're going to do to refine or perfect our skill. Because it's very easy to break promises we make to ourselves. It's very hard to break the promises that we make to people that we care, trust, and respect. So whoever that is, whether it's a boss, whether it's a colleague, whether it's kind of somebody internal competition in your office, whether it's a workout partner, think about the concept of, let's say you decide in New Year's you wanted to lose some weight. You go out and decide you're going to go jogging every morning. You get up the 4th morning or the 5th morning and you're sore, you're tired, you're exhausted, and it's nasty weather outside. It's pretty easy to just hit the snooze button and go back to sleep. But let's say you had a buddy you talked to at the Christmas party, and you told him about this New Year's resolution to go jogging. He said, yeah, that sounds like fun. Why don't we do it together so we can hold each other accountable? So it's the 5th day, you're sore, you're tired, it's ugly outside, but you get up and get ready anyway because you know your buddy's going to be on the doorstep at 5:30 to ring in the doorbell to go jog. You know, that accountability factor, that guilt and resentment and you know, that fear of breaking a promise to somebody you trust, respect, and their advice and guidance is important to you, is one of the most powerful things you can do to implement change in what you do on a daily basis to perfect and refine your skills. You know, it's that old analogy of as iron sharpens iron, so man sharpens his fellow man. And substitute women, so we're not, you know, gender biased here. But you know, the reality is if you take these 4 steps, apply it to today's webinar. What's the most valuable thing you heard? What action do you need to take to put it in your business? By when will you have that action implemented or completed? And who are you going to tell that you're going to do this and ask them to hold you accountable? I guarantee you, you'll see dramatic results start to happen in your business. You'll see your volume grow dramatically. You'll see your path and the amount of time, energy, and effort you spend on each customer and with each customer to convince them, the less you have to twist their arm to do business with you, and the more that your business just to happen for you. If there's anything my team or I can do for you, simply sign on dynamicsocoach.com/strategy, schedule one of those free strategy sessions with one of our coaching team, get some great help, support, guidance, no cost, no obligation. Just one more thing we feel is the right thing to do to help you truly understand how to take it to the next level in your business. With that being said, guys, we're about ready to close this webinar out, but Earl, I wanted to give you one more opportunity here just to drop in any final thoughts, ideas, comments as we begin to wind this thing down.
Yeah, I just like everyone to understand that learning is a process. When we come up with a new philosophy or a new
I'm wondering
behavior,
if sounds like either Mr. Earl has his microphone on mute or has already had to jump on to his next meeting.
No,
well,
I'm not on
said,
mute.
guys,
I'm here.
We wish you all the greatest success. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars. If there's anything our coaching team can do to help you get to the next level faster, certainly do not hesitate to ask. Just reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide any support and guidance that we can to see you take it to the next level. Remember that how you choose to react, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react to it. So what you choose to do today makes all the difference in whether you have a good day or a bad day. So choose to make it a great day.